Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the threadbare shoes of a woman who refuses to stay put. You're standing in a cold stone room with straw pressed into every crack. The candle on your table sputters, casting shadows that look a little too much like accusing fingers. Your heart hammers under your ribs as you run one last check of your things. A knife with a bone handle, a purse with 5 coins, a woolen wrap that smells like the goats it came from. Outside the shutters, the village sleeps, blissfully unaware that by morning you'll be long gone. You probably won't survive this, not if the road has its way with you, but that's hardly going to stop you, is it? So before we drift any deeper, if this hushed little corner brings you even a flicker of calm, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it feels right in your chest. And if you'd like, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, breathe slow, let the weight fall off your shoulders, and sink with me into tonight's slow unravelling of the past, right here on Historian's Diary. You close the small wooden chest that once held your dowry linens. They're gone now, traded for a donkey that broke a leg halfway home. Some would say that's just your luck, but you prefer to think you're simply unburdened. You press your palms flat against the splintered lid, feeling the grain catch on your skin. The chest stays behind. You can't carry what won't keep you alive. One by one, you lay your treasures out on a scrap of linen. A worn comb, a tiny brass crucifix, a bundle of herbs tied up in string. You tuck each into the sack slung over your shoulder. The knife goes last, nestled where your hand can find it without looking. It's no sword, but it will do. The air is so thin with winter that every breath feels like it might shatter inside your lungs. You pull your wrap tight, trying not to think about how it's always smelled of goat, or how that smell will cling to you wherever you go. At least it will announce you as nobody special. In times like these, being forgettable is better than being noticed. You lift the latch of your door slowly, so slowly you can count each tiny creak. Outside, frost clings to the ground like a warning. The moon is a thin grin overhead. You take a step over the threshold and for a moment you're sure you'll be struck by lightning or seized by an invisible hand. But nothing happens, just your pulse, hammering louder than any church bell. With one last glance into the cottage, the place you were meant to grow old, you turn away. The door swings shut behind you, and that sound is final in a way you hadn't expected. You will never open it again. Down the lane you keep to the ruts where wagon wheels have worn the earth flat. A dog barks behind a fence and you freeze, one hand on your knife, but it only sniffs the air then curls back into its hay nest. The village is mercifully silent. Perhaps the saints have decided not to meddle tonight. In your mind, you rehearse every reason you might need to give a curious stranger. You're going to care for a sick aunt. You're following your husband's body to its burial. You're making a pilgrimage for your sins, all of them true in their way and all of them untrue enough to buy you time. Halfway down the main track you pause and look back. The thatched roofs huddle together like gossiping women, their chimneys spitting faint smoke. You imagine tomorrow's dawn. The baker's wife will notice your absence, will lean over the fence to ask if anyone has seen you. Eventually someone will remember the donkey, the dwindling coin purse, the way you'd stared at the horizon too long. By then, you hope to be days ahead. Your feet are already numb by the time you reach the boundary stone. It stands half sunk in frozen mud, carved with a crude cross. Some say the old gods still walk the land past this point. You can't afford to care. You press your hand to the cold rock and whisper a goodbye you're too proud to say aloud. Then you lift your sack, shift the knife to where you can feel its comforting weight, and step beyond. The road ahead is nothing but darkness and the promise of everything you've never known. You don't look back again. You walk until your legs ache and your thoughts turn soft around the edges, like dough that's been kneaded too long. The night is a velvet thing, wrapping you in a hush so complete it feels almost kind. Almost. The village gate was never more than a lopsided arch of timber, patched so many times you'd stopped counting. You used to watch the men reinforce it every spring, hammering new planks across the gaps where the frost had split the old ones. You'd wondered if any wall could keep out the hungers that lived beyond. Now you stand in its shadow, heart stumbling in your chest. The hinges groan in protest as you ease the smaller wicket door open just wide enough to slip through. No one should be watching. The guards drink themselves to stupor most nights. But you can't help the shiver that races up your spine. On the far side, the road unfurls like a strip of pale cloth in the moonlight. Every stone glows with frost. You draw your wrap closer, wishing you'd been able to steal your mother's heavier cloak. But that would have been a declaration, wouldn't it? A final insult to a family already keen to pretend you didn't exist. You step forward and the wicket clicks shut behind you. For a heartbeat, you expect someone to seize your shoulder, drag you back through the door, and demand to know what sin drives you to leave. But the road stays empty. The gate remains closed. The world does not end. You laugh, just once, soft and incredulous, because the absurdity of it hits you all at once. You've spent so long dreading this moment, imagining catastrophe, and here you are, a woman with cold feet, a meagre bundle, and too many miles to count. Your laughter dies as you pass the last fence post. This is the line between what you know and what you don't. The place beyond is a landscape your grandmother used to describe in cautionary tales, a place where wolves prowl and witches boil their cauldrons. Part of you wants to believe that nonsense because it would be easier to think of monsters as separate from men. Your stomach growls, dragging you back to less poetic concerns. You haven't eaten since noon, when you'd finished the last heel of barley bread. You'd promised yourself you'd find a farm that might trade a night in the hayloft for your help with mending or milking. But now, with the sky thinning to a bruised blue and the wind picking up, you feel the first stirrings of fear. Your thoughts skitter to practical matters. The coins in your purse, not enough for more than a few meals. The little knife, the dried herbs. You try to imagine the next village. What will you say to the reeve? What name will you give? You can almost hear the words forming on your tongue, a false history ready to shield you. When the first roosters crow, you slip into a thicket by the roadside. The branches snag your skirt, but you don't curse. Instead, you settle onto a patch of frozen moss, draw your knees to your chest and let yourself rest. You can't risk entering a settlement in broad daylight. Too many eyes, too many questions. Best to wait for twilight. Your head droops, then jerks up as a wagon rattles past, the driver humming a tuneless ballad. You stay as still as you can, praying the brambles hide you well enough. The wagon trundles away without slowing. When you finally rise, you feel older than you did the night before. Every step away from the gate is a step into something you can't name. But it's also a step away from the life that tried to make you smaller than your own shadow. And that, you tell yourself, is worth every ache in your bones. By noon, you've slipped through the edge of another hamlet, little more than a ring of cottages around a sagging well. You keep your hood low as you cross the yard, heart drumming. A dog lifts its head, sniffing at the air but doesn't bark. A woman hauling water squints at you but says nothing. You offer a nod you hope looks confident, though your insides are melting with dread. As you pass, you catch the familiar smell of cabbage stew drifting from a cook fire. Your mouth waters, and for a ridiculous moment you consider knocking on the door, trading the last of your coin for a bowl. Instead, you keep walking. Hunger is simpler to bear than suspicion. When you've put the hamlet behind you, you finally let yourself breathe. You pause at a mile marker, a carved stone showing the cross and a crude crown. It's said King Edward himself commissioned these markers, so pilgrims could find their way without paying a guide. One of the only sensible acts you've ever heard attributed to him. You run your fingers across the mossy letters, grateful for the familiarity of something old and stable in a world that feels anything but. The sun drops lower, and you know you have to find a place to wait out the coming dark. There's a grove ahead, where the trees grow close and the underbrush is thick. It's not safe, not really, but neither is sleeping in the open. You step off the road, branches crackling under your boots. Inside the grove, shadows swallow you in seconds, and for the first time since you slipped past that crooked gate, you feel almost invisible, almost safe. The forest greets you with a hush so complete you can hear your own heartbeat. Each exhale rises in a pale cloud that dissolves before it reaches the tangled canopy. You remind yourself this is just a place, not a legend. No witches here, probably. No spirits waiting to steal your soul. Just trees. Just cold. Still, it feels like the branches are whispering about you. You pick your way deeper, testing every step. The moss is slick as soap in places, and the roots are like old bones snaking through the loam. Once your foot slips into a hidden hollow, and for a moment you fear your ankle has given way. But the pain is only a sharp warning, enough to remind you that you're not made of the same iron as the stories about women who run. When you finally stop, it's because you can't feel your toes. You lean against the broad trunk of an oak, pressing your cheek to the rough bark. It smells of old rain and fungus. You wonder if this is what freedom tastes like. The grit of earth in your teeth, the dull ache in your joints. You kneel to check your bundle, fingers clumsy from cold. Everything is still there. The coins, the comb, the little brass crucifix. You wrap the crucifix in a corner of linen and press it to your lips before tucking it deeper in the sack. You don't know if it will help, but you can't bring yourself to throw it away. You sit with your back to the tree and let your eyes adjust. The shadows shift, settling into the shapes of stunted shrubs and drifts of leaves. You imagine them moving just a little more than they ought, and you almost laugh at yourself. Almost. Because this place feels alive in a way no village ever did. As the day dies, you pull your wrap tighter and force yourself to eat a pinch of dried herbs. They taste of bitter green and do nothing to quiet your stomach. A light joke drifts through your mind. If you survive this, you'll have the figure of a saint, all ribs and piety. You snort, startling a pair of birds from a nearby bush. They take to the air in a flurry of wings and your heart skips. For a moment you think you've been found, but the grove remains empty. Hours pass, marked only by the cold deepening. You doze in fragments, waking each time a branch creaks overhead or a distant cry rolls through the dark. Once, you're sure you hear a man's voice, too far off to make out the words. You press yourself into the hollow between two roots, praying he doesn't come closer. When dawn bleeds into the canopy, you unfold yourself slowly, joints crackling. You stand and stretch, shaking leaves from your skirt. You step back onto the road, blinking against the pale light. The forest watches you go, its whispers soft as a grandmother's scold. A mile later, you find a fallen log by the roadside. You sink onto it, rubbing your ankles, and you can't help but think how absurd it is that you once feared boredom more than anything. Now you'd give your last coin to sit before a fire, stirring a pot and hearing familiar gossip. You touch the knife at your waist, reassured by its presence. The blade isn't very sharp anymore, but it's something. Better than empty hands. In the distance, a wagon creaks over the ridge, the driver hunched beneath a quilted cloak. You pull your hood lower, hoping he'll pass without noticing you. But as he draws near, he reins in the horse and calls out, "You there? Are you alone?" Your throat closes. You have two choices: pretend you can't hear, or answer. You swallow, then force your voice to work. "Just walking?" He squints down at you, his face a collection of creases and frostbitten patches. "Not safe. Bad folk on this road." You nod, saying nothing. He watches you for a long moment, then clucks his tongue and flicks the reins. The wagon rolls on. You wait until it's out of sight before releasing the breath you didn't realize you were holding. By mid-morning, you reach a bend in the track where a small shrine crouches behind a cairn of stones. The paint has flaked from the carved virgin's face, leaving her expression blank and faintly disapproving. You kneel and cross yourself, whispering a plea that you'll see another sunrise. Just before you stand, you notice something wedged into the rocks. A crust of bread wrapped in linen. Pilgrims leave offerings here, you remember, hoping for blessings. Your stomach clenches. You look around, half expecting the Virgin herself to scold you. Then you take the bread, tucking it into your sack. You tell yourself you'll replace it when you can. If you can, you push on. The tree's thin. giving way to open fields rimed with frost. A crow caws overhead, a black speck against the iron sky. The road keeps going, straight and unforgiving. And you keep walking because what else is there to do? You don't know exactly when the day begins to slip back into darkness. There's no bell to toll the hours out here. No steady rhythm of chores and meals to mark the passage of time. Only the slow fade of colour as the sun sinks behind the low hills, taking the last shreds of warmth with it. You try not to think about how long it's been since you slept in a bed. Since you lay beneath a roof you could trust not to collapse in the night. Since you closed your eyes without pressing your hand to the knife in your belt. But tonight you have no walls at all, only the ragged stretch of dirt track and the brittle grass that sighs under your boots. When the last daylight dies, you stop walking. Your legs wobble beneath you, every muscle trembling with exhaustion. The cold is a living thing now, crawling up your skirts and sinking its teeth into your skin. There's no sign of a village or even a lone cottage. The nearest settlement might be miles ahead, or behind if you've taken a wrong turn somewhere along this wretched road. For a moment, you consider retracing your steps, risking the questions that would follow when you turned up again, hollow-eyed and empty-handed. But no, you've come too far. If you turn back now, you'll never find the courage to leave again. You shuffle to the side of the track, searching for any patch of grass flat enough to lie on. A hollow beneath a hawthorn bush seems the least miserable choice. You crouch, gathering your skirts, and ease yourself down, tucking your bundle against your chest. As you settle, the branches rattle overhead, dry pods clicking like a chorus of bones. You think about how your grandmother used to say hawthorns belong to the fair folk, and no Christian soul should sleep under one. You wonder if you're too tired to care. With your back pressed to the cold earth, you arrange your cloak around your shoulders and try to imagine you're safe. That the darkness is a blanket, not a threat. That tomorrow you'll wake to a warm dawn and a hot meal, instead of an empty belly and frost-bitten fingers. You slip your hand into your pocket and close your fingers around the little brass crucifix. Just touching it makes you feel a tiny bit less alone. You don't know if that counts as faith or simply desperation. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls. The sound lifts every hair on your arms. You remember all at once that you're not the only hungry thing in this wilderness. A gust of wind slides between the hawthorn branches and finds the gap at your collar. You shudder, pulling your wrap tighter. It hardly helps. You're reminded of something you heard once, when you were a girl hiding behind the barrels in your uncle's alehouse. A travelling friar was telling the men that the road tested every Christian soul, that the cold stripped away pretences and the hunger showed what you really were. You wonder what he would say if he could see you now, curled up in the dark, so desperate for rest you'd lay your head in the dirt like a beggar. You close your eyes, but you don't sleep. Not really. You drift. Half-dreams chase themselves through your mind. Your mother's face, blurred with disappointment. Your father's voice, too soft to catch the words. The donkey you traded everything for, limping away without so much as a backward glance. At some point in the endless night, your body gives up. You sleep a little, though you never stop feeling the cold. Even in dreams, it gnaws at you, a steady, patient hunger. You wake just before dawn to a sky the colour of old iron. Your limbs are so stiff it takes 3 tries to sit up. You stretch one leg, then the other, biting your lip to keep from crying out. When you finally stand, your whole body feels hollow, like you've been scooped out. But you're still here, still breathing. You take that as a victory, small though it is. The frost has crept into your skirts, turning the hem into a stiff fringe. You brush at it with numb fingers, knowing it won't matter. In an hour you'll be just as cold. You set off down the road again, each step an argument against stopping. You don't let yourself look back at the hollow under the hawthorn. As the light strengthens, the landscape shifts from a smear of shadows into something more defined. Rolling fields marked with tumble-down fences, thickets of bramble, the occasional cow standing stupidly in the frost. You spot a farmhouse in the distance, a squat shape huddled against the slope. Smoke trickles from the chimney, pale and reluctant. You hesitate, torn between hope and caution. You need food, warmth, any scrap of human kindness. But you've learned that help often comes with a price you're not sure you can pay. Still, the thought of another night in the open is too much. You square your shoulders and turn your steps toward the farm. Halfway up the track, you rehearse your story. You're a widow, travelling to your cousin's holding. You've lost your donkey to brigands. You have nothing but your hands to offer in exchange for a night's shelter. Your mouth shapes the words silently as you walk. A dog greets you first, bounding from the yard with a bark that sounds more curious than hostile. You stop, letting it sniff your skirts. When it seems satisfied you're no threat, it trots back to the door and sits, watching you with bright eyes. You draw a steadying breath, then knock. The woman who opens the door is older than your mother, her face lined by years and weather. She studies you in silence, her gaze drifting to the bundle clutched against your chest. "Lost?" she asks, voice flat. You nod, swallowing. My donkey died. I've nothing left save a pair of hands to work." Her eyes flicker over you again, measuring your worth. After a moment, she steps back and gestures you inside. "Come in then," she says, "but you'll earn your keep." The warmth hits you like a blow. You almost stagger. Your eyes fill with tears you refuse to shed. You duck your head and step across the threshold, telling yourself you'll leave at first light. But as you settle onto the bench by the fire, you allow yourself, just for a moment, to believe you might survive this after all. The woman sets a bowl of porridge before you. You mumble your thanks, though your voice sounds like it belongs to someone else. You eat slowly, savouring every bite. The porridge is plain, but it's warm, and it fills the hollow ache in your belly. When the bowl is empty, you sit with your hands wrapped around it, letting the heat seep into your fingers. You can feel the woman's eyes on you, weighing, judging. You wonder what she sees. A beggar? A runaway? A fool? Perhaps all three. Still, she doesn't turn you out. As the day wears on, you mend a torn sheet, gather kindling, and sweep the hearth. The tasks are simple, familiar, almost comforting. At dusk, she sets a blanket and a straw pallet near the fire. You thank her again, your voice steadier now. When you lie down, the warmth of the stones beneath you feels like a blessing. You let your eyes close, and for the first time in days, you sleep without dreaming of wolves. You wake to the smell of ash and boiled barley. For a moment, you forget where you are. The low beams overhead, the pale dawn leaking through the chinks in the shutters. None of it belongs to you. Your mind gropes for the familiar outlines of your own cottage, but they're gone. All that remains is this borrowed place and the ache in your limbs. When you sit up, the old woman is already moving around the room, stirring the pot with one hand and throwing scraps to the dog with the other. She doesn't look at you. You wonder if she regrets letting you in. You gather your things quietly, trying not to make noise. You fold the blanket as neatly as you can and set it by the hearth. Part of you wants to stay, wants to ask if you could work here a few more days. But that's not why you left your village. You didn't set out to trade one small confinement for another. She finally glances your way. "You'll be going then?" You nod. "Thank you for the meal and the shelter." Her gaze softens, but only a little. "Stay on the road. The fields are full of men who think a woman travelling alone must be worth stealing." You manage a thin smile. "I know." She studies you another moment, then reaches into her apron. She pulls out a heel of bread wrapped in linen and holds it out. You take it with murmured thanks, feeling the sting of tears you won't allow to fall. "God go with you," she says, and you can't tell if it's blessing or dismissal. You step back into the morning cold, the bread warm against your palm. You don't look back as you walk away. The road is easier to follow now, a clear track packed hard by wagon wheels and the footfalls of countless pilgrims. You tell yourself that's all you are, a pilgrim, not a fugitive, not a beggar, just another soul in search of something better. By mid-morning you spot them cresting a low rise, a ragged band of travellers, bright scallop shells dangling from their cloaks, wooden staffs in hand. Pilgrims to Canterbury, you realise, though some likely have no more piety than you. A procession like this is safer than walking alone. You pause, watching them wind down the hill. There are more than a dozen, men, women, even a few children clinging to their mothers' skirts. No one looks particularly dangerous. Then again, neither do you. You adjust your bundle and step into their path. The first man to notice you is tall and thin, with a beard streaked grey. His gaze lands on your face, then drops to the knife at your waist. You see him weigh the risk in a single heartbeat. "God give you good day," he calls, voice hoarse from road dust. "And you?" you reply, travelling far. You nod. "To Canterbury." A lie, but one that will do. The shrine is an easy pretense, a destination no Christian can question. He gestures to the stragglers behind him. "You'd best walk with us then. It's safer in numbers." You don't hesitate. "Thank you." When you fall in beside them, no one asks your name. No one asks where you came from. It's a courtesy among those who wander, each of you carrying burdens best left unspoken. The hours pass in the slow rhythm of shared movement. Your footsteps sync with theirs until the sound becomes almost soothing. A woman with a red kerchief offers you a strip of dried fish, which you accept gratefully. Now and then, someone starts a hymn, thin voices rising into the cold air. You mouth the words without much conviction, but you find comfort in the sound. It makes you feel part of something larger, something that doesn't care where you were born or what you've left behind. When the sun reaches its peak, the pilgrims pause to rest. They cluster in a hollow by the roadside, unwrapping parcels of bread and cheese. You sit a little apart, eating your bread in small bites. The crust is so hard it scrapes your gums, but you savour every mouthful. A boy not much older than 12 squats nearby, studying you with solemn eyes. After a moment he tilts his head. "Are you a widow?" he asks. You swallow your bite before answering. "Yes." It's easier than explaining the truth, whatever the truth might be. He nods as if this is what he expected. Then he reaches into his pouch and holds out a wizened apple. "Here, you look hungry." You take it, your throat tightening. "Thank you." His mother calls him away and he trots off without another word. You watch him go, pressing the apple to your lips. When the band moves on, you walk with them. No one comments on your presence. In this makeshift fellowship, you are accepted simply because you are there. That evening, you come to a small village clustered around a square church tower. The pilgrims make camp in the yard behind the alehouse, spreading blankets on the frozen ground. You help gather wood for a fire, hands prickling with cold. As dusk thickens, the air fills with the smells of cooking and unwashed bodies. You find a place near the edge of the group and huddle under your wrap. One of the men, a broad-shouldered fellow with a broken nose, settles beside you. "First time on the road?" You hesitate. "Yes," he nods, staring into the flames. You get used to it, or you don't. Either way, you keep walking. There's nothing to say to that. He pulls a flask from his belt and offers it. You take a cautious sip. Strong ale that burns all the way down. It makes you cough, but it warms you too. He chuckles. "Better than freezing, eh?" You nod, wiping your mouth. After a while, the others drift to sleep. You sit with your back against your bundle, eyes fixed on the embers. You don't trust yourself to rest deeply. Not here, not yet. When you do close your eyes, it's because your body refuses to stay awake any longer. You dream of your mother's voice calling you home. You dream of the donkey, alive again, walking patiently into the darkness ahead. You wake before dawn, stiff and aching, but grateful to have survived the night. The pilgrims are already stirring, packing their things with the quiet efficiency of those who've done this many times. You stand, brushing straw from your skirts. The man with the broken nose claps you on the shoulder. "Safe roads, sister." "Safe roads," you echo. They turn east toward Canterbury. You turn west, back to the main track. No one tries to stop you. No one even asks why. As you walk alone again, the quiet feels both heavier and lighter. You miss the company, but you're glad to be unobserved. There are things you must do, lies you must shape, without so many watching eyes. The road stretches ahead, empty and uncompromising. You keep walking, By the third day on the road, hunger has become something like a second heartbeat, a slow, insistent throb you can't ignore. You ration every scrap of food until even the thought of eating makes you anxious. The apple the boy gave you is gone, and you've stretched the crust of bread so thin it feels more like a memory than a meal. But hunger isn't the only thing that teaches you vigilance. The road itself is a patient tutor. You learn to read the lay of the land the way some women read fortunes. A crooked post might mean a hidden well. A bramble hedge with a gap just wide enough for a person could be the mouth of a deer path, or the route a thief favours when he wants to disappear. By now you've started to know when you're being watched. It happens that morning in a hamlet so small you almost pass it by without noticing. 3 cottages, 1 cart, a hen that flutters out of your way with an outraged cluck. You stop in the track, scanning every doorway. No one visible, no smoke curling from the chimneys, but the hairs on the back of your neck lift anyway. You tighten your grip on your bundle. Just passing through, you murmur to no one. Maybe that's true, or maybe you're talking to whatever silent watcher lingers behind those cracked shutters. You keep walking. At the far edge of the hamlet, a sign swings on rusty chains over a crooked door. Bread and ale. A painted loaf, faded nearly to nothing, confirms the promise. Your stomach clenches, more ache than hunger now, but you have almost no coin left. You touch your purse through the cloth, feeling the shape of the 2 pennies you've guarded since you left home. Enough for bread, maybe. Enough for ale, doubtful. You tell yourself you'll manage without, that you'll find a more generous village ahead. But your legs betray you, carrying you to the door almost without your consent. Inside, the air is close and smells of yeast and old wood smoke. A woman stands behind the counter, her hair bound in a kerchief so tight it flattens her brows. She looks up at your entrance, her eyes sharp as fishhooks. What do you need? Bread. Your voice sounds small, like a child's. She nods toward the shelf behind her. A single round loaf remains. You force yourself not to stare at it too hungrily. 2 pennies! Your heart sinks because that's all you have, but if you don't eat you won't make it another day. You fish the coins from your purse, laying them on the counter. The woman sweeps them up without ceremony. She doesn't ask where you came from or where you're going, and you don't offer an explanation. When she hands you the bread, it's warm. You clutch it to your chest like a relic. Thank you, she doesn't reply. Outside again, you walk a little way beyond the hamlet before sinking onto a fallen tree to eat. You tear the loaf in half, closing your eyes as you chew the first bite. The crust is thick, but the crumb inside is soft enough to feel almost luxurious. You eat slowly, forcing yourself to save the second half for later. When you rise, your legs feel steadier. The hollow in your belly has softened to something more bearable. You keep walking, letting the rhythm of your steps carry you past the worst of your thoughts. By midday, the clouds have thickened overhead. The air tastes of snow. You pull your wrap tighter around your shoulders, wishing for a cloak you'll never afford. Ahead, the road dips into a shallow valley. At the bottom, a group of men loiters near a cart, their voices rising and falling in rough laughter. You pause on the ridge, scanning for a way around. But the valley is open, treeless. No path but this one. You consider turning back, but if you do, you'll lose precious hours. You can't risk another night in the open. So you square your shoulders, adjust your bundle, and begin the descent. As you draw nearer, their laughter dies. 6 pairs of eyes fix on you, 2 intent. One man steps forward, a grin stretched wide over broken teeth. "Afternoon," he calls, voice oily. You nod without stopping. Afternoon. "Where are you bound, love?" "Pilgrimage," you say, not breaking stride. One of the others spits into the grass. Not much of a pilgrim without a badge. You keep walking. Your pulse drums so loud you can hardly hear. The broken-toothed man moves to block your path. His hand drops to the knife at his belt. Be a shame if you lost your way. You stop, staring at the ground. "I have nothing worth taking." "Ah," he says, voice softening in a way that makes your skin crawl. But that's not always true, is it? A part of you wants to bolt. Another part knows that running will only give them an excuse. Before you can decide what to do, a shout echoes across the valley. You all turn. At the crest of the ridge behind you, 2 figures on horseback sit silhouetted against the cloud-heavy sky. One lifts a hand in greeting, and your heart stutters with something like relief. The men by the cart hesitate. Then, as the riders begin to descend, they melt away, slipping into the scrub like foxes at dawn. You don't wait to see where they go. You walk, faster now, past the abandoned cart and up the far side of the valley. By the time the riders reach you, you're nearly at the top. "You all right?" The nearer calls down, a woman's voice, surprisingly young. You nod, though your throat is too tight to answer. She studies you as she draws level, her hood falling back to reveal hair the colour of wet straw. "They didn't touch you?" "No." "Good." She glances at her companion, a bearded man whose expression never softens. "We'll ride behind you to the next crossing." You want to protest, say you can manage alone, but you swallow the words. Pride has no place on this road. You nod again, grateful and ashamed in equal measure. They follow at a distance as you walk, their horses' hooves muffled by the frozen ground. With each step your breathing eases. By late afternoon you reach a fork in the track. A wooden sign leans drunkenly against the milestone, its letters half worn away. One arrow points east to Canterbury, the other west toward the coast. You turn west. "Safe roads," the woman rider calls after you. You glance back, managing a small smile. And to you. They watch you go until the bend hides them from view. You keep walking, the ache in your legs almost pleasant now, because for all the danger, all the hunger, you're still moving. Still free, the road west unspools under your aching feet, a ribbon of ruts and frost. By now you've learned not to look too far ahead. When you let your gaze wander to the horizon, you start to feel the weight of every mile you have yet to cover. It's easier to measure progress by the things you pass. The blackthorn hedges whose thorns catch your skirts, the mile markers leaning like drunkards in the ditch, the crows that follow you for hours, their ragged calls echoing in your skull. You pass a field where a scarecrow sags against its post, head hung in resignation. You catch yourself envying it. No hunger, no fear, no need to pretend it belongs anywhere. You mutter a bitter little joke as you walk by. At least the crows don't bother with questions. Around midday, the sky grows dense with grey. Snow begins to fall in thin, spiteful flakes that melt the instant they touch your skin. Your wrap grows damp and heavy. Soon the cloth clings to your shoulders like a second skin, offering no warmth at all. You keep walking because stopping feels like surrender. Eventually the road bends around a low rise and spills into a shallow valley. Nestled in the hollow is a village a little larger than the last. A cluster of cottages, a timbered inn with a crooked sign, and a smithy belching black smoke into the afternoon gloom. Your stomach clenches, hopeful and wary at once. You pause at the edge of the track, rubbing your hands together to coax a little feeling back into your fingers. A sign nailed to a gatepost proclaims the village's name, though you can't make out the faded script. No matter. You're not here to read, you're here to survive the coming night. As you approach the inn, you take mental inventory. 2 coins left, coppers, not enough for a room. 1 half loaf of bread, no more dried herbs, and no favour to call in, no name that might buy you credit. You step through the inn's low doorway and into a haze of peat smoke and sour ale. The warmth makes your eyes sting. Behind the counter, a broad woman with a mole on her chin studies you without expression. "Room?" she asks, as though she already knows the answer. You shake your head. "I've no coin for a bed, but I'll work," she snorts. "So will everyone." "I can mend, spin, clean." Her gaze drifts to your wrap, to the road dirt ground into your hem. "You can scrub pots?" You nod, swallowing the last of your pride. She jerks her chin toward a doorway behind her. "Show me your hands." You extend them, palms up. They are red and chapped, but not so soft as to betray you for a woman who's never worked. She studies them a moment longer, then sighs. "You can sleep in the loft if you scrub every dish when the men are done eating." Relief nearly buckles your knees. Thank you. Don't thank me till you've finished. She waves you through, and you find yourself in a cramped kitchen where a girl barely into her teens scrubs at a copper pot nearly as big as her head. She doesn't look up as you join her. The next hours pass in a blur of scalding water and grease. You scrape and scrub, your fingers numbing again in the suds.
No.
Some of the men from the common room drift in to leave their empty mugs on the trestle table. A few glance your way, curiosity flickering in their eyes. You keep your gaze fixed on the pot in your hands, pretending you don't notice. The girl beside you finally breaks the silence. You on pilgrimage? You nod, of a sort. She grins, revealing a missing tooth. Me mum says that's just what folks say when they've no place else. You don't answer. When the last dish is finally clean, the woman with the mole returns. She tosses you a coarse rag to dry your hands. Up the ladder, she says. Find a corner, don't expect breakfast. You climb into the loft without complaint. The hay smells of damp wool and mice, but you don't care. You curl up around your bundle, the ache in your arms a dull comfort. As you drift towards sleep, you think of your mother's voice, telling you that a woman alone has no shield but her virtue. You wonder if she'd still believe that if she were here, with frost in her bones and no coin in her purse. You wake before dawn to the scrape of brooms on the floor below. Your muscles protest as you stretch. You climb down the ladder, nodding to the girl who's already stoking the hearth. The woman with the mole hands you a crust of bread without comment. You thank her anyway. Outside, the road waits. You force your stiff legs to carry you past the last cottage before you break your meagre breakfast into bites small enough to trick yourself into thinking it's more than it is. It isn't long before the cold sets in again, seeping into your bones, reminding you that you are only a body with limits. By late morning you spot a lone figure ahead, a man trudging in the same direction. He carries a staff and wears a broad hat pulled low. You slow your steps, debating whether to catch up or lag behind. You've learned that sometimes company is worse than solitude, but as the wind sharpens, the thought of another voice becomes too tempting to dismiss. You quicken your pace until you're within hailing distance. God keep you, you call. He turns, revealing a beard the colour of wet ash. His eyes are wary but not unkind. And you, he replies. You fall into step beside him, though you leave a careful space between you. Long road, you say. He nods. Longer for some. You don't ask where he's going. He doesn't ask why you're alone. It's an unspoken agreement, as though the road itself has taught you both the same lesson. Curiosity is a luxury best avoided. For a few miles you walk together in silence. Eventually you come to a fork where a signpost leans at an angle, its arms pointing in 3 directions. I turn here, he says. You nod, though you feel a small pang of disappointment. Safe roads, you tell him. Safe roads. He lifts a hand in farewell and is gone. Alone again, you head west, the track narrowing into little more than a footpath. The wind rises behind you, carrying the promise of snow. You walk faster. When the first flakes fall, they are small and dry, sifting into the seams of your wrap. You pull it tight, bowing your head. You remind yourself you've survived worse. You remind yourself you have to keep going. Because the road is all you have left. You lose track of the hours as the snow deepens. Time becomes something measured only by the burn in your thighs and the raggedness of your breath. Your world narrows to a simple mantra. Left foot, right foot, left foot again. The path becomes a white corridor, hedges and ruts swallowed under drifts. You think, if I stop walking, I'll freeze where I stand, and the thought isn't as frightening as it should be. You force yourself to focus on little things, the wet crunch of each step, the rasp of your breath, the sting where snowflakes melt on your cheeks. Anything to keep your mind from slipping into the same blankness that seems to swallow the land itself. By mid-afternoon, the sky is the same colour as the ground. You glance back over your shoulder and see no trace of your footprints. It feels like the road is erasing you as you go. Ahead, the path dips into a shallow hollow. You spot a low wall rising from the snow, just high enough to break the wind. You stagger toward it without thinking. The wall turns out to be the remnants of an old sheepfold. The stones tumbled in places, but enough remain to give you a moment's shelter. You sink onto a ledge of rock, your legs trembling too hard to hold you. You pull the last of your bread from your bundle. The crust has frozen hard as bone. You gnaw at it anyway, blinking against the tears that spring to your eyes. When it's gone, you tuck the linen away. For the first time, you let yourself consider what will happen if you don't find another village soon. You imagine the snow covering you by inches until you vanish like a hare in its burrow. You close your eyes, willing the image away. Something shifts behind you. A rustle, too soft to be the wind. You twist around, your heart slamming against your ribs. A man stands at the far end of the fold, watching you from beneath the hood of a patched cloak. He's so still, you wonder if he's been there all along. "Lost?" he asks, his voice rough with disuse. You rise slowly, trying to keep your hands from shaking, number just resting. His gaze flicks to the empty linen in your lap. "You'll starve, girl." "I'll manage," he snorts softly. "Pride won't fill your belly." You don't answer. He studies you a moment longer, then reaches into the satchel at his side. He draws out a small cloth bundle and tosses it across the stones. You catch it by reflex. "Eat," he says. You hesitate. There's nothing in his face to read, no sign of malice or pity. Just the flat exhaustion of a man who's walked too far and too long. Slowly, you unwrap the bundle. Inside are a few strips of dried meat and a heel of brown bread. You look up to thank him, but he's already turning away. "Wait," you call. He pauses. "Why help me?" He doesn't look back. "Because once someone helped me." Then he steps over the far wall and vanishes into the snowfall. You stand for a long moment clutching the food. Part of you wonders if it's a trick, if there's poison in the meat or filth in the bread. But the hunger is too fierce to deny. You sit and eat, tearing small bites with numb fingers. When you finish, you feel a little stronger. Not warm, but less hollow. You rise, brushing snow from your skirts. You have to keep moving. The wind has picked up, driving the snow sideways across the path. You bend your head and walk into it. For hours, you see nothing but white. You start to believe you might be the last person left alive in the world. Then, just before dusk, the storm begins to break. The clouds lift in tatters, and a weak smear of sun touches the horizon. In the distance, you glimpse the crooked outline of a steeple. A village. Your breath catches. You start down the slope, legs unsteady with relief. The track leads you past a frozen pond, the surface opaque with rime. A pair of geese huddle on the bank, their necks tucked under their wings. Even they look surprised to see you. When you reach the first cottage, you knock without hesitation. You're past caring what you look like, past worrying whether you seem desperate. You are desperate. A woman with a lined face and red-rimmed eyes opens the door. She studies you without surprise, as if lone travellers appear here every evening. "Please," you whisper, "I'll work for food, just for the night." She nods once, stepping aside. "You'll find no charity here, but you can help in the byre." "Anything," you say. She points across the yard to a low building. "The cow's nearly dry. You'll clean her stall and see to her water." You nod again, not trusting your voice. As you cross to the byre, you pass a man mending a broken sled. He doesn't look up. You wonder if they think you're a bad omen, some harbinger blown in on the storm. Inside, the air is warmer, though it smells of manure and stale hay. A single cow lifts her head to watch you, her eyes liquid and unimpressed. You set to work without complaint. You scrape the soiled straw into a heap, your shoulders aching. You haul fresh bedding from the loft above, wincing as chaff works into the cracks of your raw hands. When you finish, you fetch water from the trough outside. The bucket is so heavy you nearly drop it twice, but you manage. You rub the cow's flank, murmuring nonsense. The animal leans into your touch, her warmth seeping into your chilled palms. When you return to the cottage, the woman gestures you to a stool by the hearth. She sets a bowl of thin pottage before you. You eat without lifting your gaze, too tired for conversation. Afterward, she leads you to a pallet in the corner. You can sleep here, she says. You sink onto the straw, exhaustion pressing you down. That night, you dream you're walking still, your feet bleeding on an endless white road. But when you wake, you are alive. The woman is already tending the fire. She glances at you. You'll be going today? You nod. Thank you. She doesn't reply. You gather your bundle, what's left of it, and step outside. The snow has crusted over in the night, glittering in the pale dawn. You start walking, each breath a little easier, for now that is enough. Section 9. By the time the sun has cleared the roofs of the village behind you, your feet are soaked to the ankles in half-melted snow. You take each step carefully, testing the crust of ice before you put your full weight down. One slip, and you could twist something. Maybe bad enough you'd be forced to crawl back to the woman's cottage and beg for help she doesn't have to give. You tell yourself you're not afraid, you're only cautious. But when a crow startles out of a thorn bush with a rasping cry, your heart leaps into your throat, proving the lie. The road ahead is straighter than most, running like a pale scar between fields glazed in frost. You can see a line of trees on the horizon, bare branches black against the bleached sky. They might mark the edge of an estate or the start of another forest. You decide not to care which. You've learned not to expect kindness from either. For the first hour you make good progress. Your legs feel steadier for the small meal, your breath pluming white in an easy rhythm. You start to imagine you might reach the coast by the next market day, if the weather holds. Maybe you'll find a ship that will take you for the promise of work, a scullery maid, a seamstress, a washerwoman. Anything will do, as long as it means you don't have to turn back. That hope lasts until the second hour, when the ache in your feet becomes a throb, then something sharper. You pause on the verge of the track and lean on a post, lifting your left foot from the ground. The sole of your boot is splitting away from the upper. A long flap of stiff leather dangles like a tongue. You curse under your breath. Nothing blasphemous, just a word your father would have scolded you for. You set the boot down and try to shift your weight differently, but it does no good. Every step sends a jolt up your leg as if you're walking on a blade. You consider stopping, but there's nothing here but empty fields, and the sun still hangs low, offering little warmth. If you rest too long, you'll stiffen up entirely. So you keep moving. By the time you reach the trees, you're limping. The pain in your foot has grown into something that makes you lightheaded. When you stumble over a root, you catch yourself on a low branch, gritting your teeth against the flare of nausea. You stand there, breath coming in ragged gasps, and look around. The wood is thin, just a strip of trees no more than a bowshot deep. But even so, it feels like a wall, something you must pass through, though every instinct tells you not to. You swallow, tasting the flat bitterness of fear. A thought drifts through your mind. This is where they'll find me come spring. You close your eyes. When you open them again, nothing has changed. The trees are still there. The pain is still there. And the road is still the only way forward. You take a step, then another. Inside the wood, the light dims to a blue half-dark. Snow lies in drifts, pocked by the tracks of animals you can't name. You keep your gaze on the path ahead, trying not to imagine eyes watching you from every shadow. When you hear voices, you nearly slip. If they come from somewhere deeper in the trees, a low murmur broken by soft laughter. You crouch instinctively, pressing a hand to your pounding heart. You wait, straining to pick out words. Said she had silver hidden in her skirts. Fool to walk alone. Don't matter, she won't be walking long. Your mouth goes dry. You glance behind you. The road is empty. If you turn back now, you'll have to limp through open fields, exposed to whatever or whoever might be following. A branch cracks ahead. You can't stay here. You edge off the path, moving sideways between the trees. Each step is agony, but you force yourself to keep going, placing your boots carefully to muffle the crunch of snow. The voices grow louder. You catch glimpses of movement. Two figures in dark cloaks walking parallel to the path. One of them carries a cudgel. You crouch behind the bowl of a twisted beech and hold your breath. Think she went this way. Tracks end here, must have cut through. Your stomach flips. The other voice, higher, more impatient. We'll find her. Can't be far. You press your palm to the ground, feeling the cold seep into your skin. Time stretches. You count your heartbeats, each one a thunderclap in your ears. Then, footsteps receding. Slowly you lift your head. The figures are moving away, deeper into the trees. You wait until they vanish, then count to 50 before you stand. Your legs tremble as you pick your way back to the path. When you reach it, you don't look back. You simply start walking as fast as your ruined boot will allow. By midday, you emerge from the wood. The fields beyond are silent, the snow unbroken. You feel a savage relief until you realize your foot has gone numb. You hobble to the nearest rise and sink onto a low stone wall, fighting the urge to cry. You peel off your boot and examine your foot. The skin is pale, the toes tinged blue. You rub them fiercely, trying to bring back sensation. It takes longer than you like. When you finally slip the boot back on, you feel as if you've used up some last reservoir of strength you hadn't known you were carrying. Still, you stand, you keep walking. Later that afternoon, you come upon a wattle fence marking the boundary of another village. Smoke drifts from a few chimneys, promising warmth you dare not count on. At the first cottage, you knock. No answer. At the second, the same. At the third, an old man peers out, his face a mask of suspicion. "I'll work for shelter," you rasp. He squints at you, then sighs. "Come in before you freeze." Inside, the single room smells of onions and tallow. He points to a stool by the hearth. "Sit. I've no bed, but you can rest by the fire." You nod, lowering yourself carefully. He ladles a thin soup into a bowl and sets it before you. You murmur thanks, your voice fraying at the edges. As you eat, he doesn't ask questions. When you finish, he gestures toward a basket of kindling. "Split that for me, and you can stay the night." You force your body to obey, though every movement feels carved from pain. You split the wood into neat piles, your breath pluming in the cold drafts that slip under the door. When the work is done, he grunts approval. "You're no beggar," he says. You shake your head. "No." "Running from something?" You meet his gaze. "Running to something," he snorts. "Same thing." That night, you sleep with your back to the hearth, your bundle clutched to your chest. When dawn comes, you rise without waiting to be told. He nods as you step out into the cold. "Safe road to you," he says. "And to you," you whisper. The snow crunches under your ruined boot as you turn west again. You keep walking, because there is no other way. You leave the village behind before the sun has fully cleared the rooftops, your breath a ragged cloud in the brittle air. Every step is a negotiation with your foot, which has begun to throb again, a low, relentless ache that makes you clench your teeth. You try not to think about what will happen if the skin breaks, if infection takes hold. There is no leech here, no wife with a clean cloth and vinegar to poultice the wound. There is only the road, and you, and the promise you made to yourself that you would not turn back. It helps, in moments like this, to imagine the coast as something more than a word. You picture it the way you've heard in tales, a line of white cliffs, gulls wheeling overhead, a vast restless plain of water stretching to the edge of the world. You tell yourself that if you can reach that place, you will become someone new, someone who has survived, someone no one can send home. But the thought doesn't last. It's too thin to warm you, too easy to puncture with a single question. And then what? You shake it off. You've learned not to plan more than a day ahead. Plans are luxuries for people with more choices than you. By mid-morning, the snow has begun to melt under a pale, reluctant sun. The road becomes a churned ribbon of mud, each step dragging at your boots. You stop once to scrape the worst of it from the soles, hissing as you jar your foot. On the far side of the rise, a low stone bridge crosses a sluggish stream. The water is brown and slow-moving, crusted in places with broken ice. You pause at the parapet looking down. Once, you think, you might have found this pretty, a quiet place, the water whispering under the stones. But now you only see how cold it would be to fall in, how hard it would be to climb out. You step away, gripping the rough edge of the parapet until your balance steadies. On the other side, the track forks again, though the signpost has long since toppled. You stand, studying the ruts and hoof prints. The left branch looks more travelled, the earth packed hard. The right is narrower, nearly swallowed by brambles. You choose the left, telling yourself that if others have passed this way, it must lead somewhere. For hours you see no one. The fields on either side lie fallow, marked by the pale stubble of last year's harvest. Here and there, crows pick through the rows, their black shapes vivid against the thawing snow. Once, you think you catch movement at the edge of your vision, a shape darting behind a distant hedge. You stop, scanning the field, but nothing stirs. You force yourself to keep walking. You know better than to trust your eyes when you're this tired. The road climbs again, winding between two low hills. At the crest, you pause, bracing yourself on your good foot. Below lies a shallow valley where a few cottages huddle around a stone church. A plume of smoke rises from a forge, pale against the sky. You feel your shoulders loosen just a fraction. A village means people, and people, for all their dangers, sometimes mean food. As you descend, you rehearse your story. You're a widow on pilgrimage. Your husband died last harvest. You're making your way to your cousin's holding near the coast. You have no coin but can work. You whisper the words under your breath like a prayer. At the first cottage, you pause. The door is ajar, a thin drift of smoke escaping into the cold. You tap the frame lightly with your knuckles. No answer. You wait, heart fluttering. Then a dog pushes its head out, a lolling pink tongue behind yellowed teeth. You back away slowly, the beast's gaze fixed on you. The second cottage is little better, shutters closed and no sign of life. It isn't until you reach the forge that you find a man. He is broad-shouldered, his face hidden behind a leather mask as he works a length of iron on the anvil. Sparks leap and die in the mud. You hover at the threshold, waiting for him to notice. When he does, he lifts the mask and squints at you. His eyes are grey, tired rather than cruel. "Need something?" he asks. You swallow. "Only work, or a place by your hearth for the night. I can spin, mend, clean." He studies you, his gaze taking in the state of your boots, your wind-chapped face, the way you lean on your left foot. "My wife has the pox," he says after a moment. "No call for strangers in the house." Your stomach sinks. "I understand." He hesitates. "There's a barn behind the forge. If you're quiet, you can sleep there, but you'll leave before the sun's up." Relief floods you so fast it makes you lightheaded. "Thank you," he nods once, already lowering the mask again. You find the barn easily enough. It smells of old hay and cold iron. A single cow stands in the far stall, watching you with mild curiosity. You set your bundle down and sink onto a pile of straw, too tired to care that it's damp. For a long time, you simply sit, pressing your palms to your eyes. You feel the ache in every part of you. Your feet, your back, the hollow place under your ribs. You wonder how many more days you can keep moving before your body decides it has had enough. But you don't let yourself dwell on it. You stand and check your bundle. Your knife is still there, the blade dulled by days of hard use. You test the edge with your thumb, wondering if you'll need to sharpen it again tonight. When darkness falls, you chew the last of the bread you saved from the old man's hearth. It tastes of stale flour and hope, both too thin to sustain you much longer. You lie down, wrapping your arms around your bundle. The cow shifts, its hooves knocking against the boards. You close your eyes and pretend the sound is familiar, something safe. You drift in and out of sleep, woken by each groan of the timbers, each gust of wind rattling the latch. At some point in the night, you dream you're standing on a cliff, the sea spread below you like a sheet of hammered tin. You can hear gulls crying, feel salt in your mouth. When you wake, the barn is still dark, but you can sense the hour just before dawn. You sit up slowly, your joints protesting. You gather your things, pressing your palm to the cow's flank in a silent goodbye. Outside, the cold is worse than ever. You pull your wrap tight, your breath catching. You don't look back at the forge. You keep walking, because that is the only thing you know how to do. You leave the barn while the sky is still indigo, the air brittle against your skin. Each breath feels like a mouthful of needles. You wish you could have waited for a sliver of sun, but you've learned that dawn is when questions are asked. Who you are, where you came from, whether you've stolen something in the night. It's easier to slip away before the first shutter creaks open. Your boot drags with every step, the sole flapping loose. You tried binding it with a length of twine last night, but it's already frayed. You don't let yourself stop to retie it. Stopping means thinking, and thinking means remembering the last time you felt sure of anything. So you keep walking. As the first light spills over the fields, you see you're nearing a larger road, rutted but wide, the sort that carries carts and drovers between market towns. You hesitate at the junction. A wider road means more people, more chances to beg or bargain for food. It also means more curious eyes. You weigh the risk and turn onto it anyway. The morning passes in a slow rhythm of pain and numbness. You stop once, just long enough to press your palms to your thighs and gather the will to continue. When you straighten, a movement on the far side of the ditch catches your eye. A woman kneels in the frozen stubble, a sack over her shoulder. She's picking through last year's leavings, bits of grain the reapers missed, weeds tough enough to eat if you boil them long. Her face is hidden under a rough hood, but you recognize the shape of hunger in her shoulders. You think, we are the same. You don't call out. You have nothing to offer, and she has nothing to share. You pass each other without a word. By midday, the clouds have thickened overhead, pressing the light into a flat, colourless smear. You come to a crossroads where a signpost leans askew, one arm pointing to the coast, another back toward the inland towns you left behind. You pause, resting your hand on the weathered wood. In a different life, you might have chosen the inland road, risk slipping back into the same tangle of villages and families who all knew your name. You'd have been recognised eventually, pulled back into the old duties, the old debts. But you are not that woman anymore. You shift your bundle higher on your shoulder and turn toward the coast. The wind stiffens as you walk. Soon it's pushing against you like an invisible hand, dragging your skirts behind you. You lower your head, pressing your wrap tighter. The road climbs a shallow ridge, the ditches on either side filled with broken reeds. When you crest it, you see a walled village crouched on the far side, its chimneys smudging the sky with smoke. You slow your steps, studying the place. From here it looks prosperous. Stone cottages, a chapel with a bell tower, even a low palisade. The sort of village where they might have bread to spare. The sort of village where they'd want to know who you were before offering any. Still, your hunger is a pressure behind your ribs. You can't pass by without trying. At the gate, you find a man in a quilted tunic leaning on a pike. He watches you approach with no expression. "Business?" he asks as you stop a safe distance away. "I'm looking for work, or a place by the hearth in exchange for chores." He squints past you, as though expecting to see a cart or a husband trailing behind. "You alone?" "Yes." He lets out a long breath that steams in the air. "We've had trouble with beggars. Folk pretending to be pilgrims." "I'm not pretending." His gaze moves from your boots to your face, lingering on the wind-burned skin. "Wait here." He steps inside, leaving you at the gate. You stand in the cold, fighting the urge to turn and flee before he returns. When he comes back, he jerks his chin. You can speak to the reeve, he'll decide. You follow him along a narrow lane, the mud churned by cartwheels and hooves. People glance up as you pass, some curious, some wary. You keep your eyes on the man's back. The reeve's house is larger than the others, its roof thatched in thick golden reeds. Inside, the air smells of rushes and lamp oil. The reeve sits at a trestle table, writing on a strip of parchment. He's younger than you expected, with a narrow face and shrewd eyes. The guard murmurs in his ear, then steps back. The reeve looks you over, tapping his quill against his palm. You say you're alone? Yes. and you're seeking work. I can spin, mend, tend animals. He doesn't reply right away. He studies your face, searching for something. Truth or weakness? You can't tell. Finally, he sets down the quill. You'll help in the bakehouse. We've lost a woman to fever. You'll take her place until she's recovered. Relief makes your legs weak. Thank you. You'll sleep in the loft above the bakery, and you'll not steal so much as a crumb. If you do, you'll be out by dawn. I understand. He gestures to a serving girl by the door. Show her. You follow the girl through a warren of alleys to a low building that smells of yeast and scorched flour. Inside, a great oven glows red in the gloom. The heat hits you like a wall, drawing a shuddering breath from your chest. An older woman with flour in her hair looks up as you enter. She frowns but doesn't speak. The girl points to a ladder in the corner. You'll sleep up there. You climb into the loft no wider than a coffin. A single pallet waits, thin and lumpy, but to you it looks like salvation. You sink onto it, pressing your palms to your eyes. Below, the women work in silence, shaping loaves with quick, practiced hands. You watch them through the gaps in the boards. After a time, the older woman calls up, "If you're to stay, you'd best be useful." You climb down without protest. The rest of the day passes in a haze of labour, kneading, sweeping, carrying baskets of dough to the ovens. You don't stop to think. Work is simpler than worry. At dusk, the older woman hands you a crust of bread. Eat, then sleep. We start before dawn. You chew it slowly, grateful for every bite. When you climb back into the loft, you curl around your bundle, the warmth of the ovens rising through the boards. For the first time in days, you sleep without waking. You dream of the sea, of gulls wheeling in salt wind, of freedom so close you can taste it. You wake in darkness so thick it feels like a weight on your chest. For a moment, you can't remember where you are. You think you're still on the road, buried under snow, or collapsed in some hollow where no one will find you. Then the smell of yeast and ash reaches you and you remember the bakery loft, the narrow pallet, the woman with flour in her hair. You're not safe, but you are sheltered. It is enough. Below you, footsteps creak across the floorboards. A door opens, then closes again with a soft thud. You push yourself upright, feeling the stiffness in every limb. The ache in your foot has dulled to something manageable, though you know it will flare again as soon as you stand. You climb down the ladder carefully, your wrap clutched around your shoulders. The older woman is already stoking the oven, her hair pulled back in a rough coil. She glances up as you appear but says nothing. You fetch a pail of water without being asked, your breath rising in white plumes. You have learned in a single day how quickly questions wear out their welcome. While she measures flour, you sweep the floor. Each pass of the broom is a small reminder that your life has shrunk to the simplest of tasks. You don't know whether to be grateful for this or afraid of what will happen when the work ends. When the first loaves are shaped and rising near the hearth, she gestures you closer. "You can read?" she asks, her voice low but not unkind. You hesitate, surprised by the question. "A little." She picks up a scrap of parchment from the table, a list of tallies and names. "You'll mark how many loaves we set aside for the reeve." You nod, taking the quill from her hand. For the next hour you do nothing but track the bread as it comes out of the oven, marking each line with careful strokes. The rhythm of it is almost soothing. You begin to imagine you might stay here longer than a night, maybe longer than a week. But by mid-morning, that hope begins to fray. It starts when the door opens and a woman in a cloak lined with squirrel fur steps into the bakery. She doesn't look like she belongs here among the flour sacks and soot. Her gaze moves over the older woman, then lands on you. "You," she says, voice crisp. "The reeve wants to see you." You wipe your hands on your skirts. "Why?" She arches a brow. "He didn't say, only that you were to come at once." The older woman turns away, busying herself with the oven. She doesn't speak, but you see the tension in her shoulders. You set down the tally parchment and follow the woman into the cold. The path to the reeve's house feels longer this time. With every step you try to guess what you've done wrong. Had someone accused you of stealing? Had the guard decided he'd seen you somewhere before? Inside, the Reeve sits behind his trestle table, a small wax tablet resting near his hand. He doesn't look up as you enter. "You've been here 2 nights," he says without preamble. "Yes." "You came from the east?" "Yes." His gaze lifts. "And you left a village there without paying for your keep." You open your mouth, then close it again. For a moment your thoughts spin in blind panic. Then you force yourself to breathe. "I worked where I could," you say carefully. "I never left a place without offering labour." He watches you in silence. The room feels smaller by the second. Finally he sighs. "I've had word that a woman matching your description has been begging in every hamlet between here and the old bridge. If you're a vagabond, you'll say so now." You swallow. "I'm not." He studies your face. "Where are you bound?" "The coast," you whisper. He leans back in his chair. "Then you'll go today." You feel the last warmth drain from your skin. "Please, I've done nothing." His eyes flicker to the woman who brought you in. "We are not unkind, but we have our own poor to shelter. You'll leave by dusk." For a moment you think you might faint, but you bow your head instead. "Yes," you whisper. "You may finish the day's work. After that, you'll be gone." You don't remember the walk back to the bakery. When you enter, the older woman doesn't ask what was said. She simply hands you another sack of flour. You work without speaking. The hours pass in a dull haze. When the last loaves are cooling on the boards, you climb to the loft one final time. You gather your bundle and press your palm to the pallet, as though you might leave some part of yourself here to stay behind. The older woman stands by the oven, her face hidden in shadow. "Safe road," she says quietly. You nod. "Thank you." Outside, dusk is falling. The lane glows blue in the last light. You pull your wrap tight, feeling the cold seep into your bones again. You walk west without looking back. For the first hour, you feel nothing but the ache in your foot. You focus on it, because it's easier than thinking, easier than admitting you'd let yourself believe you might stay. When the moon rises, you find yourself near a stand of trees. You duck into the shadows, your breath loud in your ears. You sink onto a fallen trunk, pressing your palms to your face. For the first time since you left home, you let yourself cry. The tears come in silence, hot against your frozen skin. You cry until there's nothing left but the hollow ache beneath your ribs. When you finally lift your head, the trees stand silent around you, watching, waiting. You wipe your cheeks with the heel of your hand, then you stand, you keep walking. Because even now, even stripped of hope, of shelter, of anything that feels like belonging, there is no other choice. Hours pass. The road becomes a ribbon of silver under the moon. You feel yourself slipping into a kind of waking dream, each step an echo of the last. You begin to hum under your breath, a tune you can't remember learning. It steadies you, as though the sound alone can keep you upright. By dawn, you see the faint glimmer of water on the horizon. You tell yourself it must be the sea. You tell yourself you will reach it before nightfall. And when your foot catches on a hidden root, sending you sprawling into the mud, you press your palms to the earth and breathe. Then you rise as you keep walking, because you're still alive. Section 13. You don't remember standing up again, only the cold seeping through your skirts as you knelt in the mud. Your mind had gone somewhere quiet, somewhere far away, like slipping underwater. When you came back to yourself, you were on your feet, your hand pressed to the hollow of your throat as if to be sure your heart was still beating. It was. You remind yourself of that with every step. You're still here, you're not finished. The dawn comes weak and pale, offering no warmth. A low mist clings to the fields on either side of the road, turning the hedgerows into grey smudges. You walk through it in silence, the world reduced to a narrow tunnel of frost-rimmed grass and rutted earth. By mid-morning, the mist begins to thin, and you see the track bending west around a shallow pond. Beyond it, a cluster of roofs huddles together. You feel your pulse quicken. Another village. Another chance. As you draw closer, you take stock of your appearance. Your skirts crusted in mud, your wrap sagging over your shoulders, your hair a wild mat beneath your hood. You look like what you are, a woman who has run too far for too long. You try to smooth your hair with your fingertips, though you know it makes little difference. At the edge of the village, a wooden cross stands planted in a cairn of stones. Someone has draped a garland of withered ivy across the arms. You pause before it, crossing yourself out of habit. You whisper a few words you can't remember learning, and you don't stay to see if any god is listening. The lane leads you past the smithy, where a boy no older than 12 hammers iron flat while a man, his father maybe, watches with folded arms. Both turn to watch you pass. You lower your gaze, feeling their eyes like hands on your shoulders. Near the centre of the village stands a small chapel. Its door is cracked open, a strip of darkness between weathered boards. You pause again, your hand resting on the lintel. Inside, the air is warmer by a degree, scented with old wax and damp stone. A single candle burns near the altar, illuminating a wooden Madonna whose paint has flaked away until only the suggestion of a face remains. You sink onto the nearest bench. Your whole body aches with the need to stay here, just here, in this dim hush, forever. But you can't. You know better. You stand before your legs can change your mind. Outside again, you follow the lane to the largest building, a timbered inn with a crooked sign swinging overhead. You can't read the faded letters, but you don't have to. You've learned to recognize the smell of yeast and stewed meat, the murmur of voices within. You step inside. At first, no one looks up. A woman behind the counter tallies a slate with the end of her stylus, lips moving silently. A man near the hearth dozes with his chin on his chest. Another picks over a trencher of bread, tearing it into small pieces as if the meal itself is an argument. You clear your throat. The woman glances up. Yes? Your voice comes out thin. I'll work for a meal, or for a corner by the fire tonight. Her gaze moves over you, your face, your hands, your battered boots. You see the moment she decides you're no threat. What can you do? Clean, mend, whatever you need. A pause, then she nods toward the scullery. See to the pots. When they're clean, you'll eat. Relief blooms so fierce it makes your eyes sting. You bow your head. Thank you. The scullery is narrow and low-ceilinged, lined with a long bench heaped in greasy bowls. You set your bundle in the corner and begin. You don't know how long you work. Long enough that the ache in your arms blurs into something else, something that feels almost like peace. Here is a task you can finish, a purpose that doesn't ask who you were or why you've come. When you emerge, hands raw and reddened, the woman gestures you to the counter. She sets a shallow bowl before you, thin pottage flecked with barley and cabbage. You eat without tasting, too grateful to care. When the bowl is empty, she studies you for a moment. Stay by the hearth tonight, but you're on your way come dawn. You nod. You're used to these conditions, grateful even for them. That night you doze curled around your bundle, the fire crackling a few feet away. You wake more than you sleep, each time listening for the scrape of boots or the whisper of someone leaning too close. No one does. When dawn comes, you rise without being told. You nod your thanks to the woman and step outside. The air bites at your skin, but the sky is clear. In the distance, you think you can see a glimmer of water. You start walking. Hours pass. The road becomes rougher, bordered by hedgerows tangled with frost-burned bramble. You see fewer cottages. Even the crows seem scarcer here. Late that afternoon, you come upon a man sitting by the roadside, his back against a milestone. He lifts his head as you near, revealing a face lined deep as tree bark. You heading west? He rasps. Yes. Won't find much there but wind and salt. You manage a thin smile, I know. He studies you a moment longer, then shrugs. Safe road. And to you, you whisper. You pass him by without looking back. The road begins to climb again. With every step, the breeze grows sharper, tinged with a taste you've never known. Brine and something older. Something that makes you think of ships and storms and the end of all roads. At the crest, you stop. Below you lies a sweep of land sloping to the sea. A small port huddles at the water's edge, smoke rising from a dozen chimneys. Masts bob in the harbour, slender and swaying in the wind. For a moment you can't breathe. You've carried this place in your mind for so long, you half believed it wouldn't exist. But it does. You take a step forward, then another. When you reach the outskirts, you pause near a post where notices hang in ragged strips. Most are too weather-stained to read, but one near the top catches your eye. Hand wanted for mending nets. Inquire at the dock. You touch the parchment with your fingertips, as though to be sure it's real. Then you turn toward the harbour, your heart thumping, and you keep walking. Because here, at last, is a chance you have not yet spent. The scent of salt thickens as you draw closer to the harbour. The air changes here. Gone is the muddy, farm rot smell of the inland fields, replaced by a raw sting that wakes you up inside. The wind is different too, stronger, relentless. It seems to claw straight through your wrap and skirts, yanking stray hairs from beneath your hood and snapping them across your cheek. You stand for a moment in the bustle of the dock road, squinting at everything. Fishermen are everywhere, shouting as they haul up nets slick with weed and wriggling silver. Women stoop over wooden crates, tossing fish onto beds of straw. Children run underfoot, chasing each other and sometimes snatching at bits of bread or scraps dropped from barrels. Everything is in motion. Everything smells like salt and old water and hope. It would be easy, you think, to disappear here. Just another tired soul searching for a way to live. You make your way along the quay, the boards under your feet warped by decades of storms. A man in a red cap, his beard stained with fish blood, glances your way as you pause beside a stack of nets. "You the one for mending?" he asks without greeting, jerking his chin at the torn heap by his feet. You nod. "If the work's honest?" He snorts, spitting into the water. "Nothing honest about the sea, girl. But if you're quick, you'll eat tonight. If you're slow, I'll find someone else." You take the coarse linen needle he offers and sink down beside the nets. The work is familiar, if not exactly pleasant. You've mended more petticoats and bedsheets than you can count. The knots are rougher, but the principle is the same. Your fingers ache with cold and old blisters, but you lose yourself in the rhythm, in the tug and pull of thread through mesh. By the time the bells ring out from the church tower, noon, you guess, you've finished one net and half of another. The man inspects your stitches with a grunt. "Not bad. Ever got a fish?" You hesitate, then shake your head. "I can learn." He laughs, not unkindly. That's what they all say. But he beckons you over, handing you a small, wickedly sharp knife. "Try that barrel there. Watch your thumb." The work is harder than it looks. The scales are slick, the smell sharp enough to make your eyes water, but you grit your teeth and follow his instructions. Your hands are stiff with cold and your ruined boot squelches with every shift of weight, but you keep going. You remember your grandmother saying, "Idle hands bring trouble," and think how right she was. For a few hours you're just another worker on the docks, a pair of hands, nothing more. The men shout and curse, the women laugh sharp as gulls, and no one asks who you are or where you came from. It is a strange kind of mercy. When dusk falls and the fishermen begin dividing the catch, the red-capped man tosses you a heel of bread and a small smoked herring. "That'll do for today. Come back tomorrow if you want." You thank him, voice low. You find a spot behind a stack of barrels, where the wind is mostly blocked. You eat the fish slowly, savouring every salty bite, licking your fingers afterward for crumbs. As the sky darkens, you think about sleep. There are no inns you can afford, but you see others settling into corners and under awnings, wrapping themselves in old sacks and worn blankets. You huddle behind a crate, tucking your bundle under your head and pulling your wrap tight. The night air is sharp, but the scent of the sea soothes something deep in your bones. Sleep comes in fits and starts. Each time you wake, you listen to the sound of waves slapping the hulls, the distant creak of rigging, the occasional cough or murmur from nearby sleepers. You're not alone, but you're not seen either. For now that is enough. At dawn, you're roused by gulls bickering overhead. Your body aches, but you stand, shake off the worst of the chill, and join the fishermen again. The work is the same: nets, fish, endless knots, but you're stronger for having survived another night. On the third day, a woman with a basket of shrimp stops beside you. "You're not local," she observes, voice soft and shrewd. "No," you answer, "I came from the east." She squats beside you, her gaze gentle but direct. "Looking for someone? Or running from someone?" You hesitate, maybe both. She nods as if this makes perfect sense. If you're wise, you'll keep your story to yourself. The less folk know, the less they ask. You manage a small smile. "I've learned that lesson." She presses a heel of cheese into your hand. "Eat. And if you ever need a word put in for you, ask for Ellen." Then she's gone, swept up in the tide of the docks. That evening you ask the red-capped man if there's a place for you to sleep indoors just for a night. He shakes his head, but one of the younger men, missing 2 fingers on his left hand, says, "There's space in the sail loft, no fire, but it's dry." You accept, grateful beyond words. The loft smells of tar and old rope, but the wind is kept at bay. You sleep deeply for the first time in weeks. The days pass in a pattern that becomes almost comfortable. You work, you eat, you sleep, you speak little, listen much. You begin to recognize faces, to nod to Ellen as you pass, to return a smile from the red-capped man when your mending is particularly swift. Sometimes you stand at the end of the quay at dusk, staring out at the endless blue-grey stretch of sea. You think of the miles you've walked, the villages you've passed, the beds you've been chased from, and you wonder, is this what freedom is, or just another kind of waiting? On the 5th night, a storm rolls in. The wind shrieks, lashing rain against the boards. You lie awake in the sail loft listening to the thunder. Somewhere in the darkness, a man is weeping softly. Somewhere else, someone is laughing, a sharp, wild sound that startles you into a kind of clarity. You realize then that survival is not the same as living, but for tonight, it is enough. You fall asleep with your bundle clutched to your chest, the sea howling outside, and you dream, not of home, not of the road behind you, but of ships sailing into the unknown, their lanterns bright in the night. When morning comes, you rise with the others and walk back down to the harbour. The boards slick with rain, the world washed clean and shining. You are still hungry, you're still tired, but you're not defeated. You're here, you are your own, and you keep walking. You spend a week in the harbour town, learning to live half invisible among its shifting crowd of sailors, widows, fishermen, and strangers who, like you, carry no explanation for their presence but the fact of survival. Every morning you rise before first light, join the others for work, and find a different place to sleep each night, behind a pile of nets, under a half-built boat, or curled in a corner of the sail loft when there's space. The ache in your foot has faded to a dull memory, and your body has grown lean and stubborn. You learn the rhythms of the docks, when the big boats come in with their catch, when the fishwives gather to bargain and bicker, when it's safest to slip away unnoticed as the alehouse empties, and the mood of the quay turns sharp and mean. You see how news and rumour travel faster here than any ship, how the price of mackerel in the morning can decide the temper of an entire town by sunset. Work is plentiful but never promised. Some days you gut fish until your hands go numb, your skirts speckled with scales, your arms sticky with brine. Other days you stitch nets, scrape barnacles from hulls, or scrub decks for a coin or a crust of bread. The men at the docks give you little trouble. They're too busy or too wary, and those who take liberties are quickly cuffed by the older women. Still, you keep your knife close just in case. You begin to recognize faces. Ellen, the shrimp seller with kind eyes, the red-capped fisherman, always quick with a joke and just as quick to scowl. The boy called Tom Thumb, whose missing fingers make him twice as quick at tying knots. At times you even feel something like belonging. A nod, a shared meal, a story traded for a few quiet laughs before sleep. Yet you never let yourself grow comfortable. You know the road has marked you. You can feel it in the way you always check for exits, in the way you sleep lightly, your bundle always within arm's reach. Freedom is a fragile thing, easily stolen. One afternoon, the harbour master comes through the crowd with a handful of parchment slips. "Crews needed," he calls. "Anyone with strong hands or a mender's skill. 1 night at sea, good pay if you work." Your heart stutters. You think of the sea, the horizon, the chance to vanish, truly vanish, if you wish. The other dock workers hesitate, glancing at the low, fast-moving clouds. But you step forward with a dozen others, adding your name to the list with a trembling hand. That evening you are shown to a small fishing vessel, the St. Lidwina, named for a woman who survived broken bones and heartbreak and became a legend. You take that as a sign, another boundary crossed. The captain is a woman, broad and sun-browned, with a voice that could command a storm. She eyes you without surprise, as if half the world is made of runaway girls and wandering widows. "We leave before the tide turns," she says. "Can you work a net?" "I can learn," you reply, and she grins. By moonlight you help push off from the quay. The salt air whips your hair back, and for the first time in months you feel a wild, giddy surge of something like hope. The hours that follow are a blur. The crash of waves, the slap of nets, the creak of timber as the St. Lidwina rises and falls on the black water. You work until your muscles burn, until your mind empties of everything but the rhythm of sea and sky. You learn fast, you listen. When you falter, the captain's voice steadies you. When you tire, a mug of fish broth in your hands reminds you that you are here, alive, earning your place among strangers who have no need to ask your story. Dawn finds you sitting on the bow, your skirts heavy with salt spray, your hair a wild knot in the wind. The horizon is painted gold and blue. For a while you forget about hunger, about the road, about the dangers that stalked you across half the kingdom. Back on land, you help unload the catch, your hands trembling with fatigue. The captain pays you a silver penny and nods. You're a good worker. Stay if you wish. There's always room for another hand. You hesitate only a moment before nodding. Thank you. You return to the docks, silver warm in your palm. You buy bread and a wedge of sharp cheese and sit with Ellen, sharing both meal and laughter. You do not mention the road behind you. That night you sleep in the sail loft with other women, menders, orphans, widows with their own stories stitched into their hands. Someone begins a song, low and sweet, about a girl who walked to the edge of the world and came back with the dawn in her hair. You listen, eyes closed, and let yourself believe that you are safe if only for tonight. But morning brings another challenge, as it always does. News trickles down the docks. A woman matching your description is being sought. Someone has asked about you. Too many questions, too many details. Your heart clenches, the old fear tightening its grip. Ellen finds you as you're mending a net. Someone's looking. Best you keep low or think of moving on again. Folks say there's work upriver. You'd be safe there for a while. You thank her, pressing her hand in both of yours. Her fingers are rough, her grip strong. "Safe road," she whispers, eyes kind and sorrowful. You gather your things quietly. You do not say goodbye to the captain or to Tom Thumb, not to the women in the loft or the men who helped you haul nets through the rain. You slip away in the dawn, taking only what you can carry. You pass the harbour one last time, the sea wild and endless beyond the piers. You promise yourself you'll remember this place, the salt, the laughter, the way the tide pulled your heart forward. You turn north, toward the river, toward the promise of new work and new faces. The road is calling again. You do not look back. You walk with purpose, even as the fear gnaws at your heels. You're not the woman you were when you left your village. You're something tougher now, something forged from hunger and work and the knowledge that to live is to risk everything, again and again. You keep walking, because forward is the only direction left. The river road is narrower than the coastal track, lined with twisted willows and half-drowned reeds. It feels older too, as if every rut and puddle has been carved out by centuries of footsteps just like yours. People running from one life to another, carrying secrets, bargains, the burden of their own stubborn hope. The salt in the air fades with every mile inland, replaced by the thick, muddy scent of riverbanks and wet grass. Your body aches from the labour at the docks, your hands raw and cut, but your mind is sharp. You scan the hedgerows for movement, ducking your head each time a cart rattles past. Sometimes you slip down the bank and crouch in the brush, heart racing until the path is empty again. There is always the fear of being seen, of a stranger recognising you from a story, or a warning passed along by some well-meaning soul. It's a fear that keeps you light on your feet and wary at every turn. Still, there's a kind of relief in the routine of motion. You know the rhythm of the road now, the way hunger sharpens your senses, the way sleep comes in short bursts whenever you find shelter from the wind, the way even your loneliness has its own steady heartbeat. You start to count days not by sunrise or sunset, but by the moments you feel safest. The taste of bread and onion bought with your last coin, the warmth of your wrap pressed tight around your shoulders, the fleeting comfort of another traveller's greeting. By the second day upriver, you've settled into the anonymity of the road. You pass bargemen hauling ropes along the towpath, their faces burned ruddy by wind and sun. You nod, but never linger. You work where you can, a farmstead needing a hand to weed the last of the winter crops, a widow offering supper and a place by the hearth in exchange for stories and stitches. You never use the same name twice, letting old identities fall away behind you like shed skins. Some evenings you find yourself standing by the water's edge, watching the current tug at floating branches. The river, you think, is always moving, always carrying things away, never giving back what it takes. You wonder if that's what you've become too, a shape in motion, no longer rooted anywhere, destined to drift until the world forgets the details of your face. Yet the work along the river is different from the sea. Here, you mend nets and patch sails for boats smaller than those in the harbour. You learn to gut eels, to wash clothes in icy water, to barter for eggs or a cup of stew. You find that kindness is different here too, less noisy than on the docks, more likely to be shared in silence. A nod, a hunk of bread quietly pressed into your hand, a door left unlatched at nightfall. It's during one such night, huddled in a loft above a pig pen, that you hear footsteps below. You freeze, clutching your bundle, the old fear rising. But it's only the farmer's daughter checking on the animals. She glances up, sees you, and offers a crooked smile. "You can stay," she says softly. "My mother says you work hard." You manage a whisper. "Thank you." She nods and leaves you in peace. In the weeks that follow, you move north with the river, always searching for a place where your face isn't known, where the questions don't follow you. The weather turns softer, the air filled with the scent of green shoots and wet earth. Some days you work in the fields, others you walk alone, your feet numb but your mind alive with every new sight. A heron rising from the reeds, a market bustling with voices, a band of children chasing a hoop down a lane. You meet a group of travelling merchants one morning, their carts heavy with pots and ribbons, coloured cloths and trinkets. They invite you to walk with them for a stretch, sharing stories and hard cheese as the miles slip away. For a day, you're just another soul on the road, laughing at jokes and listening to tales of cities and fairs you'll never see. One of the women, old, sharp-eyed, swathed in scarves, studies your hands as you help her patch a worn hem. "You have a survivor's hands," she says. "I know that look." You almost ask what look she means, but instead you say, "Thank you," and let her words settle over you like a blessing. By the time you reach the next town, your purse is a little heavier, your spirit lighter, but you don't stay long. You've learned the cost of settling, the risk that someone will come looking, a neighbour from years back, a constable with questions, a gossipy priest. So you move on. You see more of the world in a few months than you had in all the years before. Apple orchards in bloom, riverside fairs, ancient churches where the bells sound out in the morning fog. You walk through villages scarred by fire, through hamlets where the only welcome is suspicion, through towns so busy that no one notices you at all. Each place leaves a mark, an accent picked up, a word learned, a memory that feels like it might belong to someone else. You begin to realize that your life is not a straight road, but a tapestry of small moments. The taste of a stolen plum, the rough warmth of a wool cloak traded for an afternoon's mending, the shock of laughter bubbling up unexpectedly as you listen to a juggler's story in a crowded market square. You remember the warnings you've carried, that the world is dangerous, that a woman alone is always a target, but you also learn that the world is wide and that kindness appears in strange forms. A boy who tosses you an apple from a cart, an old man who grumbles but gives you a place to rest, a stranger who shares her last heel of bread as the sun sets behind a ruined wall. Late one evening, as you walk along a silent stretch of river, you pause on a little stone bridge. The water flows black beneath you, carrying stars in its surface. You lean on the parapet, your bundle beside you, and realize you are not afraid. Not tonight, not here. You think about everything you've lost, your home, your certainty, the comfort of being known, and everything you've gained. Your own voice, your freedom, the simple joy of seeing a new place each morning. You think of the countless women who walked before you, and those who will come after, each finding her own way across a world that was never built to keep her safe. You close your eyes, breathing in the night air, and let the memory of your journey fill you. You have survived, and more than survived, you have lived. Tomorrow you will rise before dawn, pack your few belongings, and walk again. You don't know where you'll end up, or who you'll become next. But for the first time, you are content not to know. You pick up your bundle, step off the bridge, and follow the road as it unwinds ahead. A path marked by bravery and boundaries, woven through with small kindnesses, and always, always, the promise of another dawn. The river slips away behind you, its music fading into the hush of the countryside. The world grows softer as night deepens. The wind gentles, brushing your face with the scent of grass and distant water. The last glow of sunset lingers above the trees, gold and blue mingling in the sky. You slow your steps, letting each footfall become a little lighter, a little quieter, as if you could float above the earth. You find a place to rest beneath the shelter of a willow. You lay your bundle down, loosen your wrap, and settle onto the soft ground. The air is cool but not biting. You let your eyes drift closed, listening to the hum of insects, to the sleepy call of a night bird far off in the darkness. Your breath eases, the ache in your muscles softens. For the first time in a long while, you feel the world holding you gently, not as a stranger but as a quiet companion. You think of all the roads you've walked, all the places you've hidden, all the small kindnesses that found you in the least expected places. Tonight, you're not running, you're not searching, you're simply here, held in the hush between day and night. Tomorrow's journey can wait. Tonight is for rest, for dreaming of new beginnings. So let the weight fall from your shoulders. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on the river. Sleep comes softly now, settling over you like a warm, gentle hand. Good night, traveller. The road will be waiting when you wake. Sweet dreams.